أعتقد سنبدأ. I think we will start. So, hi and welcome to the first Resource and Support Hub Yemen webinar under the title, What is Safe Programming and What Steps Needs to be Taken by CSOs in Yemen. So this webinar is in English and Arabic. So if you would like to listen to the Arabic translation, please go to the Arabic channel in the bar, and if you would like to listen to the English, keep the original audio. So, morning again, and I am Rania Al-Jabri. I am the Safeguarding Country Coordinator for the Resource and Support Hub. I have more than 10 years of experience in conflict context, mainly in safeguarding, child protection, and gender-based violence. I hold a master degree in humanitarian action from University of Geneva, and I have a bachelor degree in art and education. The webinar today will be looking at safeguarding concerns that are poorly designed programs, research which are actively risked and have not been considered carefully enough. Safeguarding principles should therefore inform the design's delivery and evaluation of all types of programs and research, including events and activities. Programs and research will be then safer for those participating in and impacted by them. In this webinar, the panelists will discuss the key measures that are needed for safe programming and share their experience of ensuring programs are safe in their organization. In order to do this, we have invited two speakers who will take us today through each key part of this webinar. Please welcome with me the first speaker, Ms. Oge. She is safeguarding protection professional. Oge has over 15 years of experience in the aid sector. She has worked with different organizations, including Africa Care, Christian Aid, and Save the Children. Oge has worked in various thematic areas such as education, HIV, livelihood, nutrition, and emergency response. She is currently the National Associate for the Resource and Support Hub, Nigeria Hub. Welcome, Oge, with us today. Moving to the second speaker, we have from Yemen, Nuria. Nuria, she is a safeguarding protection and GBV professional. Nuria has more than 21 years of practical experience in gender and protection, including GBV and safeguarding. She has worked as an employee in programs related to the peace, stability support, gender and protection in several international organizations such as GIZ, IOM, IRC. She has worked as a consultant in field of training, studies, surveys, evaluation, and national reports for several topics related to conflict, gender, peace building, 1325 resolution with a number of international and UN agencies such as UNDP, Oxfam, UNICEF, etc. So before we start, I would like to remind you about some housekeeping rules. Before we start, a few points on housekeeping. First, you are all on mute with your video turned off. This is to support with the quality and the connection of the webinar. The chat is also closed apart to the panelists, where we will be on hand to help you with any technical issues you might have. Please be aware that we will be recording this webinar to share on the online hub afterward for anyone who wasn't able to join. Note that your names will not be visible. This webinar is available in both English and Arabic, as I mentioned before. To change the language, please choose from the setting bar down at the bottom of the Zoom page. You need to make sure that you have selected mute original audio to clearly hear the interpretation. Please also be advised that this webinar contains content on safeguarding that some may find distressing. For Q&A, if you would like to ask any questions during the live question session, please add them to the Q&A function through the webinar. You can find Q&A in the controls panel on the bottom of your screen. You can find the Q&A in the controls panel on the bottom of your screen. You can add new questions or upvote any existing question. We will try to cluster them in order to answer as many of them as possible. We have also put the info email for the hub in the chat. Please do write to us if you have any question or follow-up question. At the end of this webinar, we will share with you a poll live on screen for feedback on today's webinar. Please do complete this poll. Now, I'm delighted to giving the floor and hand over this webinar to my colleague Oge, who will make this presentation, or she will present today and cover several aspects in regard to safe programming. She will tackle 4 points. First one, what is safe programming? What do you need to put in place as an organization? How to integrate safe programming and the guiding principles about safe programming. So, Oge, I'm happy to giving you the mic and over to you.
Thank you very much, Rania. I'm really glad to be in this webinar to talk us through safe programming and my experiences on it. Can I have the next slide, please? All right, but before we start talking about safe programming, let's first discuss a bit what safeguarding is, because there is still lots of confusion on the term safeguarding. So safeguarding is really made up of 3 connected issues. First, it's about taking all reasonable steps to prevent is the word there now, to prevent sexual exploitation, abuse, and sexual harassment. Not only that, but other forms of harm that occur, so that the people, so the organization now, this organization A, wants to put everything to ensure that there is no SEA, that there is no sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment, and that there are also no other forms of harm that the organization is making available, be it in terms of their programs or in terms of the staff or volunteers that work in that organization, because staff and volunteers also cause harm. You have, I've seen situations where people actually collect, ask for money before services are provided, especially in the emergency context or even development. They ask for money before the food ration cards is made available. They ask for money before, people are enrolled for services. Of course, that these services are already free. They are provided by the donor, they are funded by the donor free of charge. And when a staff, a volunteer, or whoever, comes and is asking for money or asking for sexual favors before they make this available, then that is for a form of harm. Those are forms of harm that are associated with the organization. Then, of course, again, we know that SIA is a priority for organizations to prevent and respond to. It's important that we prevent SIA and other forms of harm and also respond when an issue occurs. There are also other forms of harm like bullying, harassment, discrimination. These are some workplace issues. When you have a staff bullying another staff or harassing another staff, or when there is discrimination in the place of work, when that place is not inclusive, and there's discrimination or favoritism, be it in terms of gender, race, religion, whatever. These are also other forms of harm that can occur. In some instances, some organizations actually categorize these other forms of harm as part of their HR policies. But in some instances, it also falls under the purview of safeguarding, because basically what we are pushing for in safeguarding is that people are not harmed as a result of coming in contact with our organization or our staff. Next slide, please. Now, let's dive deep now into safe programming, now that we've had a brief understanding of what safeguarding is. Next slide, please. Right. So what is safe programming now? Safe programming is ensuring that members of the community where you work are safeguarded from any intentional or unintentional harm that may arise from your programs. So it's really ensuring, so all that we are doing is to ensure that our programs are not causing further harm to the community we are meant to support. Because, we do meet this community, we've assessed the needs there, and we say, oh, okay, yes, we want to have wash facilities here. There is need for food distribution. We want to do that. We might cause harm, whether knowingly or unknowingly. It's not always, like knowingly. For a staff, like I mentioned earlier, who goes out and asks for money, of course, that is, knowingly they've done that. But sometimes in the way the program is designed, you might not have envisaged that will cause harm. For example, when there's a program that as an organization I used to work, and then we are working with youth, and as part of the youth empowerment and supporting resilience and livelihood, we were taking children to mine, youths to mine. We train them on mining, because in that country there is lots of mining going on. So we just put them there to learn these skills, to learn this trade, but some other, at the point of evaluation, it was identified by the external evaluator that these youths were not provided with adequate protective equipment because of the risky nature of that, line of livelihood. They are supposed to have, protective equipment like helmets, like, others, gloves and that, but those weren't made available. It's an error on the part of the program design. Of course, sometimes such things happen. It's not that, you want to really cause harm, but you just like mistakenly, you leave it out, you omit it. That again, still, it doesn't stop it from being a safeguarding concern that the necessary things were not done. So in everything, it's always better to wear the safeguarding lens, so that as you are actually taking youths or implementing that program or designing that program, you are wearing the safeguarding lens to ensure that you are not causing harm in any way. Now, again, safe programming is about organizational integrity and accountability. Yes, we as NGOs, we go out to community to support them. So of course we should have that integrity, to really do what we are saying we are doing. And again, accountability, not just to the donor, but to the community that we are serving. It is, the safe program is also about ensuring the safety of everyone who comes in contact with the program. ensuring, if you remember what safeguarding is, about ensuring that we are not causing harm, putting unnecessary measures to prevent harm of seer and other harms. So ensuring that everyone, the safety of everyone who comes in contact with the program, be it children who need to cross, maybe a major road to get to the meeting venue for their program activities. Some organization, they have these child-friendly spaces, youth club, kids club in development. And then how accessible is that? Are children, do they require to walk long distances before they get to that area, to that safe space? Or do they have to cross a major road to get, which inadvertently you're causing harm if they have to cross major road? Or you're pulling children away for your activities during school hours. That again is also a harm in a way, because you are taking them away from that school for that day without making adequate provisions, to how they will cover for that day's work. Now, safe programming is not really about mitigating every single risk, because this is not possible. But, because some risks occur beyond our control, but what we need to do is to identify, assess, and continuously monitor. So yes, we might not be able to identify or even, be able to really think about and, know every single risk that can happen, but it's a step. We first try to identify as many risks as possible that, can occur in this program. We identify that, we now try to identify mitigating measures. What do we need to put in place to really eliminate this from happening, or to minimize it to the barest minimum to ensure that, it doesn't happen? So what do we do? So yeah, while we might not be able to handle and be able to think about all possible risks, because of course, yeah, I see that human limitation, but that's why it's a continuous program. It's a continuous process, risk assessment. You learn and then you reprogram and you reassess again, because you might not have thought about it, but situations change, circumstances change, and you have to, other risks now arise. Or from your programming, you now learn, we are learning in this. You now learn and say, oh, okay, this is actually something that we have not thought before. Let's now think about it now. So safe programming involves having conversations with community members, families, and program participants on what can be done to keep them safe. There is this saying that he who wears the shoes knows where it's pinching. So the community are there, the program participants, the community members, the families, they are there in the community. They know what works for them. So it's important that we involve them, while designing this, to ensure that we are not causing harm. Just like, let's not be like this organization that went to a community, saw that the women have to walk long distances to get to the stream to fetch water. And then they decided, oh, it's actually be marvelous to drill a borehole just right by, the community space there, so that, they can just all come out from their houses and just walk a few meters and get water, rather than walking kilometers to the stream. And then they put, which is a noble idea, they put the borehole, they drill the borehole, and then a year after they come for evaluation. And what happened? They still noticed that women are still going to the stream to fetch water. Well, sometimes, yes, they do use this one when it's urgent, but they still go to the stream. And then they started asking, why are you still going to the stream? And then women like, well, the time we go to the stream is actually a time for us to unwind, to talk within ourselves, to share issues and challenges and learning, and even share jokes as well. But when we are just right there in the house, we don't have opportunity to just be us, to be with our fellow women. So the opportunity of going to the stream, washing clothes there, fetching water, gives us that opportunity to really mingle and even, have also personal time for ourselves, and then the organization realized that they actually did not involve the community members, before making that decision. All right, let's have the next slide. Yes, so here now we want to review what you need to put in place for safe programming. First is about preparing. I'm sorry that the slides are too tiny, but you'll still get that and you'll be able to read on your own. So you'll prepare and to support organizations in this. You know, one key thing you need to do is to appoint a safeguarding focal person. So every organization should have a focal person. But having a focal person doesn't mean that all responsibilities is on this person. That focal person is just to coordinate. Because for every role, every job role, you know, every volunteer should have a safeguarding role in their job description. Really, you know, because everybody is responsible for safeguarding. Safeguarding is everybody's business. It is everybody's business. So the safeguarding focal person just helps to coordinate and, you know, build awareness and capacity. So the next thing is providing staff with basic training. It's important that staff and volunteers are aware of what safeguarding entails and what safe programming entails. You know, most times I keep hammering on volunteers and other representatives because sometimes we focus just on staff, forgetting that the volunteers that work in the community are also representing us. They go there with our organization name. Sometimes they have ID card or sometimes not, but they are representing us. We have consultants who come in, you know, they are also representing. So anybody who is representing our organization needs to have that basic safeguarding training to be able to understand what the values of the organization are in terms of safeguarding. Then the next one is about mapping the services available. So now this is about preparing for response, because when something happens, you don't want to be caught, delaying. You want to be able to act rapidly, promptly, you know. So ahead of time, you map out services, you identify organizations who are already into this. PSCN network is a good place to start. So you map the activities and the services that different organizations offer, so that if you have a case, then you can easily now refer. Now, the next one is ensure that any investigations, are conducted by trained investigators, because again, remember, we do not want to cause harm. If an investigation is done by people who are not trained, there is a possibility of actually re-traumatizing and causing further harm to, the survivor, and even complicating matters. And you see, maybe the perpetrator will now, everything will just be in a mess when you don't have proper investigators. So it's important that we have proper investigations, trained investigators to handle our investigations. Then again, ensure that survivors or victims of sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment and other forms of harm are supported by skilled staff. Now that goes back to the third. So you must have mapped out the services where your organization cannot offer, all the services. Then you map out and know how to refer, so that this survivor will be able to receive, adequate support by skilled staff. So if there is need for PSS, there is always need, provide psychosocial support, provide psychological first aid, provide medical services where needed, provide all kinds, and this should be by trained staff. Next slide, please. Right. So now the next we are talking about is on how to integrate safe programming into your program management cycle. We all know like this basic program management cycle. So to integrate safeguarding into safe programming, so that's do no harm. First, with the startup program. The startup program is at the point where you're still, discussing this. You are still trying to think about the program that you want to design. So at this point, to integrate safeguarding or to ensure that your program is safe, because integrating safeguarding is ensuring that your program is safe. So integrating, making your program safe, you have to do risk assessments. Again, remember, it's important because to know the situation assessment, the situation of the context. So in some instances, it's called needs assessment, so the whole situation of the context, of the location, of the community, of, wherever that you are aiming at developing. So you set up this, you have that situation assessment to find out what are the needs, what are the gaps, what do you need to do, who are most at risk, you find out all this. And then for program planning and design, at this point, you have now started designing the program. You've gotten the information you need on who is at most vulnerable, what their needs are, all that. You've done that. Now you are designing your program. So at the point of planning and designing your program, you now need to do a risk assessment of that program that you are designing. So that's the difference. The first one is about the situation, needs assessment of the context. But this one now is about the program you're designing. You want to do a risk assessment to ensure that that program itself is not going to cause harm to the community, to the program participants, and even to staff. You don't want to cause harm. So that's where you now try to have that risk assessment. And as you are doing your risk assessment, you're also trying to identify mitigation measures. So what can we put in place? So we've identified risk. Maybe the risk is that, like I mentioned, people might actually ask for money in exchange for resources. What do you do? Or people, are not aware of safeguarding. What do you do? So in that instance, one of your mitigation might be that you need to ensure that, there is adequate training and sensitization routinely, not just one-off, for every new hire, every staff, and for all staff. And then that every new staff signs up to code of conduct, and safeguarding policy, so that they will not say that they are not aware, of what it means. So that's that about risk assessment and mitigation. Then at that point of planning and designing your programs, then the next one is around implementation. So now we are in the field, we are doing the work, we are registering beneficiaries, we are having community meetings, we are setting up structures, we are sharing food ration cards, we are setting up child-friendly spaces, we are like all those activities we do, we are doing that now. So at this point of doing it, what we need to ensure is that the systems and procedures are well reflected. So these systems and procedures, this is where now all those things, those mitigation measures that you've identified at the second phase, after your risk assessment, you've identified mitigation measures. This is at the point where you ensure that those mitigation measures are implemented. So you ensure that the mitigation, that you're training people, that they are signing all that, and that all that, even consultants, when they come, have a briefing on safeguarding. So that's that. Even your reporting mechanisms, because you might have identified it as a challenge, that there's a challenge, there's a possibility of people asking for sexual favors, asking for money, asking for whatever, for services. And then, you want people to be able to report to your organization. So you must have put in place as mitigation measures that you have reporting channels. So now at the point of implementation is where you ensure that those reporting channels are put in place and they are being monitored. Now, the next phase is now about, closure, program learning, closure, evaluation. So at this point of closure, learning and adaptation is key. So you're also reviewing not just the program, how the program itself went, even if it's WASH program, if it's food security and livelihood, if it's health, you're not just reviewing how that went, but you also want to review and learn how the safeguarding mechanism, how safe was it really? So we have usually, like when we, in emergency settings, when we have some distributions, we have post-distribution monitoring, PDM, how have you integrated safeguarding? Some questions that will bring out the issues, to in the PDM, to ensure that you capture that. So with that, you will now learn. So what worked, what did not work, where do you need to improve? Where do you need to improve on? And then, that, of course, it then plots back again to maybe the design of another program, and, the cycle continues. All right, next slide, please. Yeah, so let's talk about the guiding principles. I've mentioned some of them already. So you will guess that the first one is about do no harm. Do no harm principle. That is the fundamental principle that applies to us in our safeguarding work, and of course, safe programming, because you want to integrate safeguarding in your programs to ensure that it is safe. You don't want to cause harm. So that is it. So all the programs you design will be to the best interest of your program participants, and their decision should always be at the heart of whatever program that you design. Participation, community members, including children, should be asked what makes them feel safe and unsafe. So, like I've mentioned, is those that where the shoe that knows where it's pinching. So it's important that we involve the community. Let's not think that we are experts, we are coming in, we know the best. No, let's learn from them too and see what's applicable in their context and their situation. Training. I cannot overemphasize this. It's important. Everyone working in your organization, consultants, volunteers, whatever it is, even your vendors should be aware of your safeguarding policy and your intention to not cause harm. You may break it down to the lowest minimum, as you can describe it, so everyone, so your staff and volunteers should know, and also the community members should also be sensitized so that they are aware of what works, or what they should expect and what they should not expect, so that if someone is coming and asking for money, they know that no, organization A has told us not to pay, that they will not ask us for money. So that means this person is going contrary to what's the organization, and then they can now start thinking of who to report to. Make IEC materials, simple pictorial materials that will be acceptable and understood in that context. Adaptation, mentioned it, is key. In this field, we learn and relearn and relearn. You can never learn it enough. There's always something new. There's always a risk that you never anticipated, and then boom, you're like, oh my God, I never thought about this, and it's there facing you. So you need to learn so that you adapt, and then reprogram and bring it in. And so here in this sector, here in safeguarding, it's about being flexible. We need to be flexible. Sustainability, yes, is another. So at every stage, we want to actually continue to involve the community members so that they also understand the importance of safeguarding, and ensure that the system and things we put in place while implementing the program can still continue even afterwards. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? All right. Okay. So that's all for now, and I hand over now back to Rania, our chair, to take us through the next points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oge, for this fruitful presentation. And now, I would like to ask my colleague Nuria to open the cam, and also Oge, please, I would like you to return back and open your cam to have like this kind of an interactive session, because I have like some follow-up question based on your presentation. So I would like to remind all the participants that for any questions, please use Q&A button at the panel of Zoom, you can ask any question, and once we finish our discussion, we will answer your questions. Also, I would like to remind you that for English, for Arabic, because this session will be in English and Arabic, I will speak with Nuria in Arabic and with Oge in English. So to change the language, please keep changing the rooms between English and Arabic. So thank you again, Oge. Nuria, بناء على خبرتك في اليمن.
Based on your based on your experiences, who are we protecting? Who are we maintaining safe through the safe programming? And based on your broad experience working with CSO, Yemen CSOs, what are the challenges, the key challenges that that the CSOs are facing in Yemen to assure safe programming activities? Good morning, Rania. Good morning, everyone. I am delightful to have you all here. Before speaking about our experiences, let me tell you about the CSOs and local organizations. We all know that CSOs used to work up until 2015 in sustainable programs, but because of the conditions, they have moved from sustainable phase to requirements. And now it's new concepts, it's new principles in an emergent and urgent situation that meets the variants and the changes in the field. During the first phase, like the conflict that happened, we didn't have NCOs didn't have enough time to train local CSOs to meet the requirements, and organizations started responding in training to work. It's like a training to have the job. You are working, you are taking instructions, and you are being trained within the field of work. They have started to work on the principles at the beginning of humanitarian principles, after that protection principles. Who are the categories that we are working with during the conflicts? What are the mechanisms that should be provided and available to work on? And from my personal experience, I have worked with the CSOs in 2015. After that, it was only few trainings or consultants that are not in this field of area. But this field of area, it was the first requirement to train them on protection principles. And of course, the safe programming and safeguarding that was included under protection. It wasn't a specific pillar. It wasn't a specific category. During this stage, the CSOs started to take into consideration when designing the recommendations and program, especially protection principles, and it has become a priority for donors parties and donors organizations. CSOs have been helped in projects recommendations, how to conduct the part that had to do with risk assessment and risk mitigating when it comes to protection and safeguarding, and how to be included and integrated and as a recommendation in their projects. I have helped some CSOs in safeguarding policies and some code of conduct, of course, when it comes to applying safeguarding. And another organization I have helped in preparing a whole guide about safeguarding, and it's going to be published and is going to be trained for CSOs. And this is a briefing for everything I have worked during the past period with the CSOs, the civil society organizations. And this is in regard of my personal experience. Is there any other question? The challenges, what are the challenges? If we would like to answer the webinar questions, what are the challenges that the CSOs face to assure and to guarantee that there are safe programming? The first challenge that the CSO faces is they do not recognize there is no enough cognitive for the principles of protection and safeguarding. And this represents, up until this moment, they don't have these principles and concepts. They don't have it. And especially that some organizations are having consultants from people outside the organizations when they are working on recommendations and conducting activities. And this consultant will work here and then leave without transmitting this experience within the organization. And yeah, this part that we miss, and how to integrate and include this in their projects, policies, recommendations to be adopted. These concepts should be adopted. And another challenges that we face is an adaptation. And it was mentioned in the first presentation, we should be adaptable and we should adapt. Unfortunately, some organization work as if this is a request from the donor, and we work on it just randomly because after that, and there is no adaptation, real adaptation to be more clear and to learn from here. We should learn from it in other projects. And some organizations, yes, work with these principles on safeguarding, even though they're not classifying it. There is no clear policy to have it within their scope of work. But it's not automated, it's not clearly framed as a policy or clearly drafted as a policy or a code of conduct. You might call it as an improvised operation, unorganized operational work. And there is also, there is no better understanding between the conflicts between men and women. This is a problem so many women and females are facing, especially working in infrastructure, for example. They are working to rehabilitate and a school or a hospital. They don't have or provide the simplest requirements. For example, one of the periods with one of the CSOs, we have been working because they would like to rehabilitate schools. In one of the governorates, what happens that women, when we ask the laboratory owner, there is a restroom, but there is no time for them. When I asked them, they told us that the restroom is far away. So they are embarrassed to walk in front of men. So we are not living this privacy, these simple parties. I can't go to the restroom because it's far away. So what I mean here is sometimes these are simple requirements, but they're not taken into consideration. They're not taken into account. Nobody focuses on those details that might cause harm. For example, and we have this stereotype that people are dropping out because there are students or economic or early marriage, but there is a bigger problem to focus on, which might be restrooms or bathrooms. And these are what I'm saying here, to understand requirements, not to have the clear methods for complaining. I might have a code of conduct or a policy, but without having a complaining that has to do with and I don't have, yes, complaining departments or mechanism, a fund or a hotline, and some methods as well. The response period might be a man might be a response, and some women might find it difficult to say and state their problem, the issue for a harassment, for example. So these simple procedures for complaining is still limited and restricted to some people. And we have sometimes toward the end of any program, especially safeguarding, it's an opportunity to let us work from the first program and to reflect it. And there is another problem here that we face by CSO, local CSO, is that the qualified staff is being a drop out, and because, for example, the period of a program or not, they're not being paid, so they are leaving. This qualified staff, this qualified employee is dropping out. So the organization now is back to the first stage, and there are some other training, safeguard the training. People who are working with the organization might give substances. This supplier has no idea about protection principles and safeguarding, and thus this might cause harm, even though they are qualified, but they are not reflecting their experiences towards beneficiaries and people they are dealing with, like suppliers. They will consider that this person might practice violation of the principle, safeguarding principle. And this is a briefing about the challenges. that I have seen when it comes to how to overcome these challenges. First of all, the principles, safeguarding, and it should be a mandatory training for all the staff. What I mean by mandatory training, each one, a volunteer, even the policies and the code of conduct should be spread for all people. Everyone should be aware, the beneficiaries and the staff, the volunteers, for local organizations, that they have a team of volunteering. And this is why we should have it. They need training. They should have a mandatory educated training to have clear policies, procedures and policies, to raise awareness with all these procedures and policies, applying policies and procedures, and applying complaints regarding safeguarding and safe program should be fast, because if they were not fast, then they're losing the honesty and transparency. To have faith and adaptation, not because you are in front of a donor that will check and audit that I have a policy. No, we should adapt it passionately, and we should apply it with them, with the employees, with the beneficiaries, with suppliers, or anyone, or any categories that we are working with. There is also a stage, the after training, the post-training stage, the complaints mechanism should be activated, transparency and accountability should be activated. So many organizations miss this part, which is the most important part, because we're going to build upon the challenges, the benefits. How are we going to benefit? How are we going to overcome? And when it comes to that we should have attracting staff and qualifying staff, this helps us to move on and to push forward, not to always borrow an expert or, let's say, a consultant to design a program. Why not to have those people in our staff, in our CSOs? For example, social media platforms exists, internet connection exists. There are so many methods that we can, in which we can apply everything, and to be better, to work with one of the staff, and to have my own resources. These are the major challenges that we should focus on. And the last part here, as a CSO, when there is a risk assessment, we should focus on programs and projects, and not to separate the requirements and separate them from programs and projects. And this is a summary. This is a brief about the challenges. Thank you so much, Nuria. It was fair enough and full, based on your broad experiences with the CSOs and in safeguarding, as you mentioned, which is considered to be a new concept in Yemen. Okay, back to you.
And based on your experience with the CSOs in your country. So why is safe programming essential? And what is your call to the action for the CSOs, or what your advice to the CSOs in Yemen, based on your experience in your respective country? And we have like 7 minutes, and I would like to hear from you, and then we'll wrap up with Nuria and close. Yes, over to you, Oge, please.
Thank you very much. Hope you can still hear me. It just started raining here. Yeah. All right. So safe programming really, like I mentioned in my slides, is to ensure that our activities are not causing harm to our program participants, to our beneficiaries, to the community we serve, and even the staff. For some of the things that the CSOs in Yemen should do, one, really, the key thing is about risk assessment. Because if you don't assess the risk, then you wouldn't know some of the potential challenges that might happen. So it's important that you conduct that risk assessment. And some of the risks might be in terms of like emergency programming. We know that projects are short. You don't have time to really work with community, to recruit staff or volunteers. You have quite a short time to do all that. So that might be a risk. even the location where the program is situated might be a risk in terms of maybe security and that, or even how inclusive your programs are. Are the programs inclusive, or are they just targeted to few, marginalized? What of people with disability? What of ethnic minorities? What of, all those sexual minorities? How well is it inclusive for that? And even working with partners, if you're working with, be it CSOs or sometimes some other very small organizations called CBOs in my context, community-based organizations, working with them also, poses risk. So when we identify some of these risks, you assess them, then you identify mitigation measures that will help. So that's really what I would encourage the Yemen CSOs to do. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Oge, for sharing your experience with us. نورية, كلمة أخيرة. نورية أنت موجودة معنا؟ Okay. كلمة أخيرة حابة توجهها
We would
للمنظمات.
like to hear something from your side, Nuria, for CSOs. As you know, with the RSH, this is a sequence that we will have activities about capacity building for CSOs, Yemen CSOs, and in so many programs. What are your advice or final in the last 4 minutes for CSOs in Yemen when it comes to safe programming and safeguarding? I wish all CSOs to be committed to safeguarding and principles of protection, and to use the available resources, and to start to work on capacity building, to work on internal skills, to work on documentation, the policies, the procedures, trainings, raising awareness. And I hope that they seize this opportunity. And please, Rania, if you have any future opportunities about the capacity building program, I wish that they benefit from the available training, because we know in Yemen they are facing a struggle, that there is a person that might adapt and train them. So this is an opportunity to benefit from, and to benefit from any training opportunity to work on. Thank you so much, Nuria, and thank you all dear participants. I'm very delightful. I am very happy to have this huge care from CSOs, local CSOs, or even international or NGOs for attending this webinar, which is only a brief or the first one of its sequence from the upcoming webinars that is going to be held in the upcoming events, and so many activities and sessions. And now I'd like, we are going to have a number of questions that might help us to improve the RSH services. Please answer it. It's not going to take more than seconds, and I hope to see you in other activities. And I see that there are so many organizations, local organizations. If you have any questions that haven't been answered today, you might communicate and contact us through the email that was shared with you at any time. And we are going to be aware to provide all information needed for capacity building for NGOs alongside safeguarding, as you know. We work in Middle East, in Syria, Jordan, Yemen, and we are very happy to communicate and to contact with you to answer your requirements and queries, because this is our role, to build the capacities for CSOs for this need.
أشوف الآن أمامي في تفاعل جدا. شكرا جزيلا. أن يجيبوا على السؤال أو التقييم الظاهر أمامكم. لسه في ناس ما جاوبوا. حابة أشكر نورية وأوجي مجددا على هذا الساعة الرائعة من المعلومات اللي أثرونا بها من خبراتهم سواء في نيجيريا أو اليمن. وسعيدة جدا بتواجدكم، وحابة أقول لكم فرصة سعيدة ونهار سعيد، وعن نهاية جلستنا لليوم. شكرا جزيلا، إلى اللقاء.